Hi everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for April 7th through 13th, 2025. We are completely in April right now. We've just had a solar eclipse, maybe not just. That solar eclipse was a little over a week ago as I record this, but it's still with us. In fact, a solar eclipse opens up a 6-month chapter of time, one that we will keep working through, keep revisiting all the way until September of 2025. As also, as I spoke again, I spoke last week. Last week, it was like Neptune, and probably Mercury retrograde as well. But yes, Neptune is now in Aries. That's something that we just need to continue to feel into. Neptune doesn't work necessarily on a physical level. It really works in the ethers. It works in our intuition. It sort of represents a vibe shift, but one that may be not, let's say, easily picked up on right away. And then also we have the energy of Mars very present at the moment. That solar eclipse new moon highlighted Mars in Cancer. And Cancer is actually going to be a major focal point for the next 6 months. We will talk about that. And speaking of Mercury retrograde, Mercury is now direct. Yeah, a little bit screwy, I guess, the past few days. And then we also have one more planet turning direct, and that's Venus, and that will be this week, just in time for a Libra full moon. So, we have a lot to talk about. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium presently located in the rolling hills of central Maryland. And every week we gather live to talk about the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. Certainly, eclipses and eclipse season are the other 50%. That part talks about time, the energy of time, and how time unfolds in our lives, both personally and collectively. It's always fun to see where we're watching from. I know we are an international audience, my Sag rising just likes to travel through you. Good reminder. Actually, next week, speaking of travel, I will not be doing this live. I will do a recording, and it's probably the easiest to either go to YouTube or Spotify to get the replay. It's not always easy to upload things, especially with Facebook, especially when you're on the road. But I will be out of town, so let's dive into the astrology. So I want to kind of get back to some astrology basics, and it's a little bit on the technical side, but hopefully the fun technical side, because there's a little bit of confusion about something that I wrote on social media about the presence of Cancer. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to that solar eclipse in Aries. That solar eclipse, of course, was on March 29th, and that solar eclipse was at 9 degrees of Aries. So 9 degrees Aries, and you would even say 9 degrees of Cardinal, is a hot spot over the next 6 months. Aries is our major focal point. So if astrology is time and how we live time, we need to understand how time builds. It builds in smaller increments into bigger increments. We have the lunar cycle, which is 4 weeks, new moon to full moon to new moon again, that's 4 weeks approximately. And then we have the time from solar eclipse to solar eclipse, that is 6 months. The eclipse cycle in total is about 18 to 24 months. The lunar nodes will span 18 months in two signs of the zodiac opposite one another. So what I'm doing here is like we're starting small and we're like getting bigger. So that's why eclipse season, one of the reasons why eclipse season is so important, because it changes the hour. We are now in a new container of time. Like, what do you mean container of time? So time, of course, we can measure it with a clock. We can measure it even with astrology, but time builds. we don't always think of time as something that's three-dimensional. Certainly we think of it as linear or even spiral, but time builds in a very predictable pattern in astrology. And we will see that in, it's a technical detail, the square. The square, which is, if you know some astrology, you know that the square is a 90-degree aspect. It's the energy of manifestation. If we take the 90-degree to 90-degree to 90-degree around the circle, we get the four directions, the cardinal points, the four seasons. Where is she going with this? So when we have a solar eclipse, now we're in a container of time that we will see something build around 4 points within that container of time. That container of time goes, and we're going to look at it linearly. It goes from the solar eclipse in Aries, this was on March 29th, all the way to the next solar eclipse, which will be September 21st, 2025. And we will look for those points where time will build, and typically you will see events personally and collectively. Within your own life, again, because of that eclipse that we just had at 9 degrees of Aries, that's an important point for you for the next 6 months. And you may be thinking, but Katie, I'm not an Aries. And I would say, but person on the other side of the internet, you have all 12 signs in your astrology. You're not just your sun sign. Aries could be a career sign, for example. It could be a relationship sign. It could be a sign of health and wellness. It really depends on the sun sign. So we know that bare minimum, next 6 months to really look at Aries. Further, we know that Aries is a sign that's about actions, ruled by Mars. Action, forward movement, desire, power, going after what we want, needing to stand up for ourselves, to stand on our own 2 feet. Mars is about individuality and individualism. But in astrology, nothing can be taken individually because we have what are called polarities. So the other side of the sky from Aries is Libra. We have a Libra full moon this week. And Libra reminds Aries that we can't do things alone, that we need to compromise, we need to negotiate, we need to figure out what is the best solution for everybody. It is the natural ebb and flow. We can't be so Libra that we give everything away. We can't be so Aries that we don't listen to the needs of other people, for example. Even though you may not have these signs in your personal astrology, they represent energies and archetypes. Aries, new beginnings, whether that is the first of spring, whether that's you get up in the morning, whether that's you decide to take action and to move forward in your life. You're doing that with the energies of Aries, symbolically speaking, and Mars. So over the next 6 months, depending on our lives, because astrology is not an absolute, it is a construct that is then applicable to your own life. You will, on some level, need to take action. What? We have to see where Aries is in your astrology. That could be one of the domains in where the action is happening. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that Mars, as the ruler of the eclipse, will drive the energy of the eclipse for the next 6 months. For example, we know that Mars is presently in Cancer, and it will actually change signs and go back into Leo, where it started its retrograde back in December. It will go back into Leo on April 18th, so just next week. So we will know that when Mars changes signs, for example, it changes the energy of the eclipse. We start to see a different lens for the new beginnings and the action, for example. I can't remember the date, but Mars will eventually get into Virgo. I think it's in May. No, it's not right. But I think it's in June, and then I think it ends the cycle. Mars is in Libra, I think, for the next eclipse, but don't quote me on that. But we need to pay attention to Mars. Further, Mars is in Cancer right now. So even though the eclipse is done, finito, we can't forget that Mars was in Cancer at the time of the eclipse. So Cancer is now a focal point for the energy of the eclipse. You're like, Katie, I don't have anything in Cancer, but you are all 12 signs. Cancer could be a career sign. It could be a relationship sign. So we need to pay attention to Cancer. The Mars was at 22 degrees of Cancer at the time of the eclipse. So these are what are called hotspots. So Mars is then pulling the energy over into Cancer for the next 6 months. And if we're getting really fancy, we had what's called a mutual reception at the time of the eclipse. So we have the circulation of energy. It's as if Mars was in Aries at the time of the eclipse. It's as if the moon was in Cancer. Cancer is home and family. It is both our household, our address. I hope you have a home. It is our sense of home. It is the where is home and who is home. Cancer is a very primal sign. We need home. We need to feel like we are safe and secure. We need to have an address. We need to have a place to really sort of put down roots. Even if you're like me and you're Sag rising and you want to see the world, we still need to have an anchor point. Family often is a very complicated subject matter. This is where Cancer gets into the memories of the past and sometimes even the emotions that come with it. So the energy of Aries, action, new beginnings, is then coming over to a space symbolically that is about our living situation, our household, emotions, the past, memories of mom and dad, ancestors, roots, foundations. And so that is another major lens for the next 6 months. This past, I think it was Thursday, Friday, we had the first quarter moon. And that first quarter moon after solar eclipse brought the energies because the moon was in Cancer and it activated this story. So it's just to sort of look, what's the story that's happening? That's not to say that Thursday or Friday or even Saturday is the absolute for the next 6 months, but we may see themes, or we may see conversations, or you might see something about home and living situation, even if it's just, daydream, for example. So these are places that we're going to keep coming back to in our time. And certainly when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, where is Aries? And there's my dog. That's, anyway. Where is Aries and where is Cancer in your astrology? Because they represent two major points, even if they are internal, even if they are quiet. But if you are a fire sign, if you are a cardinal sign, they are major points in your astrology. My cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So, eclipse energy. We are technically past the eclipses, but the way that I see it, until we get to the end of the lunar month, which will be at the beginning of May, we will be then officially out of eclipse season. If I were to add things a little bit more with this energy of the eclipse, with the energy of Mars, we do have Saturn going into Aries on May 24th. I'm kind of jumping ahead of things the next month and a half, but Saturn going into Aries is one of the top line marquee events, astrologically speaking, for the astrology of 2025. Saturn is the master timekeeper in astrology. And so Saturn will then bring an energy to the new beginnings and the seeds that we have planted with the solar eclipse. So Saturn typically makes something real. It makes something concrete and live. So use this week, use the energy even of, Mercury direct, Venus direct. It's just to sort of vision the types of new beginnings that you want to create for yourself. Certainly, we are in a very interesting time in the world. There's a lot of things that may be out of our control, but what do we then set our intentions on? What do we then put our focus on, for example? So that is, like I said, your basic astrology math, so that we can really understand time, and sort of even to go back to the eclipses of Aries and Libra, even though we're past this, this eclipse does connect to, let's say, the Aries solar eclipse of April 8th of 2024, and even the Aries solar eclipse of April 20th of 2023. So this is the last one. It's the last eclipse in Aries Libra that we will have for 9 years. Yes, 9 years. And it echoes eclipses from 2014, 2015. It echoes eclipses from 2005, 2006. I have to go back and look at it. But just wanted to go back and resurface a little bit. that eclipse. So this week, this Monday, as I'm recording this, April 7th of 2020, that's just the April 13th in the small thing. April 7th, as I record this, Mercury has just turned direct, shenanigans, but Mercury has turned direct at 26 degrees of Pisces. And so Mercury, it's really interesting, the whole Aries-Pisces dynamic, because for the past few months, we had a lot of focal points on Pisces, and Pisces represents the end of the zodiac, end of a cycle, a space that is typically represented in our dreams, in our intuitions, in our spirituality, for example. And so we have two personal planets right now in Pisces. So Mercury is what's called a personal planet. It's how we think, how we listen, how we communicate, how we choose. And Venus will also be turning direct on April 12th, also at 24 degrees of Pisces. And those two planets are in the ballpark of something called the North Node of the Moon. The North Node of the Moon is at 27 degrees of Pisces at the moment, and also Saturn. I think Saturn's at 25 degrees as I record this, 25 degrees of Pisces. So we've got a lot of concentration of astrology at the end of Pisces and the end of the zodiac. 29 degrees of Pisces is like the end of the zodiac. It represents the end of a year, the end of a cycle. It's like that last breath before something new. Sorry, my mind went, speaking of something new, it just seems very Aries. If I sort of move over to the Aries, I have a Gemini moon. If it's move over to the Aries archetype of new beginnings, and especially Cancer, I'm living with, for those that don't know, I'm living with my father at the moment, and there's a wreath on the front door, and a bird made a nest there and laid 3 eggs. And so that's just, it's a very silly example of, let's say, the Aries new moon with Mars in Cancer, but it shows us that new beginnings can be, show up in a lot of different places. So that's my brain going over to Aries. But to go back to Pisces, in order to make space for something new in your life, Aries, something needs to leave. Pisces. That is just the way that it works. So even if it's internal, even if it's an emotion, even if it's emotional baggage, this is a week where with these Mercury and Venus and Pisces, we're being asked to, yes, I'll take a picture of it. We're being asked to release something in order to go into something new. And to use the image of the bird's nest with the 3 little eggs, I'm not sure if it's like a sparrow or something, but that sort of represents a promise and a potential of new life. It hasn't happened yet. With Pisces, Pisces is pregnancy, symbolically speaking. We haven't yet had the baby. We haven't yet had the new beginning. And so this week, even though we have a full moon, that full moon, it's not an eclipse, but it plays off of the recent Aries solar eclipse. It gets into that Piscean liminality, pregnancy. We're kind of in between something. And again, in order for something new to come into our life, something needs to leave. Even I have a dog as a baby, but I've never been a mother, but to even become a mother for the first time, this version of you needs to leave. It needs to end so that there is this transition, sacred transition to become a mother. If you are, giving birth, for example, but of course, motherhood comes in a lot of different ways. It's also an archetype and an energy. So this week, it's a full moon. It's also a full moon square Mars. So full moons typically run a little hot and loud. They typically coincide with personal events, personal milestones, personal achievements. Now we have a full moon that is 2 weeks after a solar eclipse, so it can put the eclipse into action and gear, and it's a full moon square Mars. Mars is not polite. Mars is like, let's do it, let's go, let's make it happen, let's take action. And so there may be some push and pull between the Libra, let's negotiate, let's compromise, and Aries, this is what I want. It is the back and forth at the moment. With 2 personal planets in Pisces, how do we have compassion? How do we see things from a higher perspective? How can we make choices, Mercury, that are for the greater good, that allow for there to be a greater solution? Both Mercury and Venus are turning direct in a conjunction to Saturn. Saturn represents a sense of endings, finality, a need to choose something, to make a commitment, to honor our commitments, to honor something larger in our lives. And so the full moon, which will be at 23 degrees of Libra, does put relationships in the spotlight. We all have some form of relationship in our life. We don't hopefully live in the woods, but we need connection. Even if we do live in the woods, we need connection. We need socialization. And so, what again, this is where astrology is not absolutes. It is the frame for the events that are happening in your life. It is to look at relationships in your life. How do you want to build connection? How do you want to build relationship? On what? Who are the people that you want in your life, for example? Where is the give and take? Do things need to be put back into balance? Because Libra actually loves relationships. And even Saturn, even though Saturn is next to conjunct Venus and Pisces, it's a reminder that Saturn loves relationships and reminds us that we can't do life alone. Even biologically speaking, we can't do life alone. So it's an interesting week. Like I said, we're still very close to the energies of the eclipses. We're still really feeling the Mars. And then this is something when I have to do the recording for next week, because I'll be traveling, when we see the Mars change signs, we will go back into what's called Mars opposite Pluto. That's something that was really in focus at the beginning of this year, and then back at the beginning of November, end of October. We are still wrapping up Mars's retrograde shadow. And then I've been saying this to people. I might even set this to you all, but 2025 has 3 acts. The first act is approximately the beginning of the year, all the way to the end of May. And that first act is very much through the lens of Mars. And then we have June, July, and August. It's a different part of the story. And then things will change. We'll talk more about that as we get closer, September onwards, because we will have another eclipse season. So that is your look at the astrology of this week, April 7th through 13th. Apparently I'm still in retrograde, so I'd say 13. And let's go through each of the 12 zodiac signs so that you will know where Aries for you, where Cancer is for you. And of course, you can always book a consultation with me to sort of get more context of where these changes perhaps are unfolding in your life. So you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. So yeah, let's look at each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and you just had a solar eclipse in Aries. So this is a big time to be in Aries, and it says, and this is just the way that it works, the next 6 months are a time of change. It is a dynamic time to be in Aries, so things are happening in your life. That said, this is the last eclipse in Aries. You had eclipses in 2023 in Aries, April 2023, and April of 2024. It does take some of the heat off of you, but it still says that this is a time where it's about new beginnings, taking action, taking that energy, as I was saying in the introduction, and one of the places in which that energy moves towards is your home environment, your living situation, and family. These things mean different things to you all. You may not have a family. You may have a family. You may be in partnership. You may not be in partnership. You may be thinking about moving, or you would never move. But nevertheless, Mars is really putting that energy of change and action in your home environment. Look to this past Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday, because we had the first quarter moon in Cancer, and it was really beginning to give a little bit of focus to where these changes may happen. We just are having a full moon in Libra this week, and this full moon is in your relationship sign. Again, relationships come in a lot of different forms. You could be in a partnership, you could be single. This full moon, for some, it is time to make changes in your relationship. That could simply mean two people are moving in together, or two people are moving out. It could mean that there's a new stage and chapter within a relationship. And even if there isn't a relationship, it is a time to bring more connection, to bring more emotional connection and heart into your life. Venus, the ruler of the eclipse, points you over towards your 12th. The 12th is a space of endings, spirituality, retreat, and Venus coming to the end of its retrograde this Saturday, the 12th. It's bringing something into relationships that might also need to make an ending. It might need to clear space so that something else can come in, or to make sure relationships are really on the same page, that there is a sense of deeper connection, emotional connection. Venus conjunct Saturn also says there's a need to make a commitment, and commitment will be a big focus as you go into the weekend and into the start of the next week. What are you committing to? What are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? You, of course, know your life, Aries, is to see how this is shaping up in your life. But typically, Saturn draws a line, and that line is just to get very clear about what you want, where you're going, who you're going with, and what you are building your life around. Taurus. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and it's wrapping up its retrograde this week. And as it wraps up its retrograde, it does so in a conjunction to Saturn. So if you recall, Venus, I think as of I can't remember. Venus is now in Pisces. And Pisces, and I think this is even the past couple of weeks, so I can't remember the exact date, but it's pulled your energy over towards the 11th. This is for Taurus a time to think about friends and community. Like, who are your friends? Who are your community? Where do you belong? Where are your people, for example? For some Tauruses, this is a time to really look ahead, to look beyond. What are your hopes and what are your dreams for the future? Like, it's to create a vision for your life that hopefully you get to bring into reality as you go into the next cycle. Venus conjunct Saturn brings you to a story that's been in your life, Taurus, since March of 2023, because that is when Saturn went into Pisces. And Saturn's time in Pisces, or Saturn's time in the 11th, is typically a little bit like deleting people from your phone book, your contacts, deleting people from your friends. It's been a time, depending on who the Taurus is, about getting very clear about who are real friends and who are just periphery people. Saturn can be very black and white. That's why I make sort of that comments about deleting people from your contacts. And I wanted to say that, but of course it's going to be in your own life, in your own way, how that's relevant. Because with Venus conjunct Saturn, even into next week, that whole time is coming to a focal point. What have you built over the past 2 years? What friends, what community? How have you reshaped your sense of connection and community? And for some Tauruses, it is about social issues and social causes, because the 11th is also a place that gets into humanitarian issues, for example. Pisces is a very beautiful place for Venus to be, because Venus is in the sign of its exaltation. And I wanted to add that because Venus is the planet of love, certainly the planet of money and value as well, especially as a Taurus. But Venus, even goods and services, are best when they are free-flowing, when they are unconditional. And maybe some of this energy that's present as you go into the weekend and the full moon is for you to really see how you can be in alignment with that, or to sort of reframe certain things in your life. That said, to go back to the solar eclipse, Aries is your 12th. The 12th is a very spiritual place. It's a space of endings, but it's also a space that brings us beyond the physical world. So that's one of your spaces where there are new beginnings. and the other space is Cancer. And Cancer for you is something called your third sign, voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. And so this is a time where it's to listen to your intuition. It's to have communication that is more heart to heart. It is about thinking in a way that is bigger and broader. But typically when we have 12th house eclipses, and this is our last eclipse since 2023 and 4, has been a time for you to go inward, for you to question, for you to think about what do you believe in and what do you stand for. The 12th, you will never find those answers outside of you. They will always come from within. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury has just turned direct, and it's doing so in a conjunction to Saturn and in Pisces. We've been talking about this quite a while, but it's important because we are beginning to come to the end of this time. You have had Saturn in your career sign of Pisces since March of 2023. Every Gemini, of course, will live this time in their own way, but this is on some level a time for Gemini to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up, to take on more duties and responsibilities, or to feel like you need to take a step up, to take another level in your maturity and growth, for example. With Mercury turning direct, I haven't looked at the math to see if Mercury is going to make another conjunction. Just probably not. Maybe next year, if this is one of the last times Mercury will make a conjunction to Saturn and Pisces for the next 30 years. But there is something about the crystallization, the concretization of this story and chapter of the last 2 years really coming into this week and even next week. So it is a time for you to get very clear. What do you want to be when you grow up? The choices that you're making, the duties and responsibilities that you're carrying, and even the role that you're playing in the world. That said, just had that solar eclipse in Aries. Aries is your 11th sign. So one of the places to circle that you will have changes and new beginnings is your social circle, friends, community. But for some Geminis, it's about your view of the greater whole, like social issues, social causes, the world, humanitarian issues. And even for some Geminis, it's about looking towards the future, really coming up with a vision for the future, for example. I will say very quickly that Saturn will move into this space this June, July, and August. So that's a time where there will be a time shift, but we will talk about that later. The other space that we'll see change and transformation is Aries. And Aries is Cancer. And Cancer for you is something called it's either your money sign, it could be literal goods and services, what you value, the resources that you have. But really this space is for us to create stability and security. It is for you to create a future, of course, and to think about broader subjects, the 11th, but also to create stability and security for yourself. And so those will be, the 2 places: value and worth, money, stability and security, resources, but also future, community, friends, social circle, where there will be changes. Oh, and Libra full moon. The Libra full moon will be in something called your 5th sign. It puts into the spotlight this idea: who are you? What are your gifts, your talents? How do you express who you are? Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week the moon is going from Leo all the way to Taurus. So for you, Leo represents money, income, material stability, and security, all the way to Taurus, which is something called your, I gotta do the math, 8th sign. And this could be a place that talks about, that's not right. Taurus is your 5th sign. Sorry, astrology, math, doing it backwards, your 5th sign. So this space of really getting into your talents and gifts and abilities by the end of the week. That said, we just had a solar eclipse in Aries, and Aries is your career sign. So this is a major eclipse for you. Mind you, it is the last eclipse because you had 2 previous eclipses in Aries in April of 2024 and April of 2023. This says that the field of action and change is in your professional life. It's either your professional life, your public life, the duties and responsibilities that you carry in this world. And then the other part that we'll see change is you, because the energy is pointing towards Mars and Cancer. The next 6 months are about, on some level, depending on the Cancer, it's about you standing on your own 2 feet, taking action, taking the reins, going after what you want. Maybe you're already doing that. Great. Maybe you're not sure, but typically Mars gives us power, drive, and courage. If you want something in your professional life, how are you going to go and get it, for example? But this is a very dynamic time to be a Cancer or Cancer rising, certainly over the next 6 months. And it's saying that there is possibly a lot of changes or personal milestones on the horizon. Oh, and Libra full moon. Can't forget the Libra full moon. Or think about the eclipses. So the Libra full moon, Libra is a cardinal sign, just like you. Cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Libra is your sign of home and family. So the full moon puts in a spotlight your living situation, your household. Could be where you actually physically live, or maybe this greater sense of home and family, or where is home and who is home. You had eclipses in this space 2024 and even into 2023, whether October or April 2023 and 4. So this, whatever this full moon represents for you, it sort of represents a finality and culmination of the time of change in your life. And I think with Venus conjunct Saturn, it's about getting very clear about not just what you want, but whatever's happening in your home environment, whatever's happening with family or living situation, it might need to align with values or your personal philosophy or your faith and your truth and your meaning. Because this has been a time for Cancer, although it gets a little bit into something that's hard to really pin down because philosophy is so subjective, it's so personal. But this time for a lot of Cancers, that's been about really opening up your eyes, seeing the world differently, expanding your world, travel, education, getting a degree, and really getting, again, clear about what do you believe in and what do you stand for. And that might have some sort of connection to your home environment, and your living situation this week. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and the sun is in Aries. Aries is a fellow fire sign, and Aries is something called your 9th sign. So this is a very typical time for Leo to really look towards the world. They want to travel, they want to explore, they want to see new things. It's also a time when when Leo really wants to share its point of view, its opinions. It could even be a time when Leo wants to teach, it wants to really hold the torch. It really depends on what's going on in your life, of course. With the Aries solar eclipse, the 9th is going to be the main field of action for the next 6 months. There could be a lot of travel. It could be foreign travel. It could be long distance travel. It could be about education. That could be where the field of action is happening again with a higher degree, or going back to school. And for some Leos, the field of action is more about philosophy, or maybe even publishing a book or teaching something, because this is a space of teaching and publishing as well. With the energy of Mars and Cancer, it points towards the 12th. The other field of action will be something called your 12th, which is a very spiritual place. These two spaces are very related, but they're also very different. What do you believe in and what do you stand for? There is the external way in which we answer questions about life. We travel, we get a degree, we explore. But the 12th is when we find the answers within. Faith is both internal and internal and external. Internal is the 12th, external is the 9th. So this is going to be the next 6 months, well, yes, about education and traveling and exploration, but it might be getting into deeper existential themes. What's my meaning and purpose? Why am I here? What is the life that I'm creating? And like, what do I believe in, but that I need to spend time with myself. I need to meditate. That said, we have a full moon in Libra this week. This full moon, it will be in something called your third sign. The third sign is kind of like your ninth, but a little bit more on a smaller level. It's about education, but it's about reading something, classes, information, ideas, curiosity. It does create a lot of movement and travel. It does create a lot of restlessness, certainly this week, and even you may be traveling this week, for example. With the energy of the full moon with Venus conjunct Saturn, it's been a bit of a heavy time for Libra, because not Libra, for Leo, because they needed to do a lot of inner work, a lot of emotional heavy lifting, and this full moon might represent some sort of need to come to a decision, come to a finality, realize something, and even make some sort of decision that will then, I think, inform some of these bigger, what do you believe in, and what do you stand for, and what is the life that you're creating. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet. Mercury has just turned direct. This is what happens every time Mercury turns stationary direct. My brain goes like this. So Mercury is in Pisces. Pisces is your relationship sign. I know we've been talking about this for the past probably 2 months because that's where a lot of the energy is focused for you at the moment, probably since February. Relationships, connections, even if you are not in a relationship, either there's a desire to spend more time with people or to look more critically at the people in your life, like, who is in my life? Do I want this person in my life? And for some, it is to build deeper relationship and partnership and connection in your life. Mercury turning direct, in a way, it does echo back to a full moon lunar eclipse from September 17th of 2024. We will have further eclipses in Pisces and Virgo going into 2026. So whatever is happening, it's actually connected to a larger story. Mercury turning direct, while not exactly conjunct with Saturn, it's pretty darn close. So this week represents a need to make a decision, a need to set a boundary, to say yes to what you need to say yes to say no to what you need to say no to. There's no absolutes in astrology. It's very particular to your own life. So it is to apply that to whatever situation is happening in your life. Saturn does talk about major events or sort of the milestones that mark our lives. So this could be a week where things are happening. That won't be necessarily the case with everybody, but this week we do have the moon in Virgo, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and this is one whole lunar cycle since the lunar eclipse in Virgo, your sign, back on March 14th. So you will get a ripple of eclipse energy. Life is kind of lifing at the moment. That said, the field of action for the next 6 months, you have an Aries solar eclipse. Aries is your 8th sign. So the primary place where things are happening are deep inside and emotional. If you need to talk to somebody, if you need to sit with yourself, I say talk to somebody, because the 8th is a space that gets into the depths of our psychology. Doesn't mean that you need to speak to a counselor, but you may feel a lot of emotions are coming up over the next 6 months. What do you do with them? How do you navigate? How do you face yourself so that you come out of the other side of this where something has been transformed? The other domain of where this energy will be received is in your, gotta do the math, is something called your 11th. It's your friends, it's your community, it's the groups that you're involved in, but it's also your hopes and your dreams and for the future. Maybe you need a sense of connect. I don't know what's going on in relationships. Of course, relationships are both one-on-one, but relationships are also community, a sense of greater connection. And this might be bringing up a need to make sure you have strong support, or you have a strong groups in your life, or maybe you're feeling very inspired and motivated to get involved in your community or a social issue or social cause, or even a humanitarian issue as well. But this energy is also the action is happening in a place that's trying to get you to think about the future and to sort of get, I think, more clear what type of future you want, Virgo. Libra. Oh, I should say Virgo, you do have a Libra full moon. Libra is your second sign of money and income, material stability and security. It just adds to the whole flavor with relationships, future, like making sure you and a partner or you and somebody else are on the same page about money and income and even self-worth and value. Libra. Libra, so you have a full moon in your sign, and this comes 2 weeks after a solar eclipse in your relationship sign of Aries. It's a interesting time to be a Libra. So it is for you to sort of sit with. I'm sure you don't need to sit with anything because you know exactly what's going on in your life. I feel like I can go through the list of Libra risings in my brain, and they have stuff, capital S stuff going on in their life. Births, marriages, moves, this sort of the top line things that you typically see with eclipse energy. Of course, it can be something that's very specific and particular to your own life. To go back to that solar eclipse, the relationships are the field of action, one of the fields of action for the next 6 months. It is about other people. If that means it is, let's say, a move with a partner or starting a family with a partner, certainly these are decisions that you cannot make in isolation. You have to negotiate and compromise with the other person that's in your life. For example, relationships might be that new people are coming in or a need to get clear about who you don't want in your life. A Libra full moon just plays off of this energy. It puts you in the spotlight. It's important for you to remember, Libra, that you had a solar eclipse in your sign back October 2024 and previously October of 2023. This full moon is not an eclipse, but it ripples out that eclipse energy of new beginnings, needing to take action, needing to stand on your own 2 feet. The other area of the domain of change over the next 6 months is something called your career sign. Cancer is your career sign. It's where I find Mars. If it's not career per se, then it is your duties, your responsibilities, or even your public life. One of the things that's going to be a major focus over the next 6 months is needing to take on more responsibility. I know you're like, nope, don't want it, send it back to the kitchen. But that's the thing about life. Sometimes life asks more of us. We become a parent, or we need to take care of our parents, or we need to navigate something else in our life, for example. Or maybe it is career. Maybe you want to really, find, I can't think of the words, find your ambition or to go after what you want, for example. But that's where you may see a lot of the changes over the next 6 months. I will also add, because Venus is your planet and Venus is turning direct on the 12th, it is turning direct conjunct Saturn. This week, next week, with the energy of Saturn, Saturn is typically like, what are we doing, Libra? It's either a yes or a no. It's an up or a down. It's a this way or that way, but it can't be in that sort of gray zone. Saturn's very black and white. So this could be a week and next week of personal milestones, but really this is a chapter that's taking you into the next 6 months. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and Mars is in Cancer still, but next week on the 18th, Mars will actually go back into Leo. So Mars has really been focusing your energy on something called your 9th. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? For some Scorpios, it's about education. For some Scorpios, it's about travel. For some Scorpios, it's about your philosophy or even your faith. Faith is not necessarily religion, but sort of your faith in the world, faith in something greater, for example. Then we just had the solar eclipse in Aries, and Aries is something called your 6th sign. So I said in the introduction to this week's video, I said there will be 2 primary fields of action for the next 6 months. In your case, your 6th and your 9th. The 6th is really like the operation space for your life. You already had 2 eclipses here in April of 2024 and April of 2023. It is a space where you need to take action. You need to put things in order. You need to clean things out. You need to create new structures of flow in your life. For some Scorpios, it is about health and wellness, because the 6th is very traditionally a space that it does talk about personal health and wellness. You need to take care of your health and wellness. The energy of the eclipse goes towards the ninth. So the ninth could be foreign travel, long distance travel. Maybe you're traveling for health, but also it could talk about service and helping people. Maybe it's travel for service and helping people, or maybe it's even about education. The role of the 6th and the ninth is to really take like learning and projects and critical thinking, and it really builds something. These two spaces, and they are part of two other spaces, but they really talk about this need to know more, to see more, to expand your worldview, to expand your vision, to expand your voice. And so that might be some of the areas where the growth is happening and even the change is happening over the next 6 months. So Scorpio, you may be traveling a lot over the next 6 months, and maybe some of that is foreign travel, or Scorpio, you're thinking about going to school, or maybe you're sort of in this phase that takes you into September of 2025 where you want more out of life. How do you make your life bigger? For example, we had a Libra eclipse. That Libra eclipse is in my brain is in an eclipse. So we're having a Libra full moon. That Libra full moon is on April 12th. That full moon is in something called your 12th. Endings, spirituality, release, letting go. You did have an eclipse here back in October 2024 and even October 2023. I think with the energy of the ninth, it gets into these bigger questions, certainly philosophical questions. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? But also matters of faith and meaning. What is the meaning and purpose of my life? Maybe with the energy of the 12th, although that's more immediate, like if you think something, like how do you bring it into the day-to-day? If you need to make a change in your life, it needs to show up in your everyday practices, in your everyday life, for example. Certainly when we get to, we'll talk next week, when Mars goes back into Leo, it's going to represent another shift for you this certainly this year, but one where the focus will be on, again, with the Mars opposite Pluto, this time over, I think since November, October, November, where you need to do a lot of deep work, Scorpio. Sagittarius. So Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is actually beginning to wrap up its time in Gemini, and it will go into Cancer on June 9th. I realize it's not June, but somehow it's April 7th, and I'm really confused because how is it April? But you are wrapping up a time, and a time that's been very dominated by Jupiter square Saturn. Life has been a bit capital life for Sagittarius and Sag rising. Life typically, when Saturn is involved, more is asked of you, more responsibilities, showing up on time, taking things seriously, building things, but also being recognized for your hard work and being recognized for perhaps an achievement, like you've worked really towards a bigger goal and it's finally happened. Every Sag rising, of course, is different. The two main domains of action for the next 6 months will be Aries. Aries is something called your fifth sign. The fifth sign is more about identity and self, like who are you, Sag? But also this space that really talks about the things that light you up and give you joy and give you pleasure. And so this will be a 6 months where you need to get back to yourself, to do the things that you love, to really get clear about who you are and who you're not. The other field of action will be Mars over in Cancer. Cancer is something called your 8th sign. If the 5th is about self and identity, then the 8th is a space where we need to face ourselves. The 5th is very much about the ego. Of course, there's positive ego. There's also negative ego. There's also the stories we tell about ourselves and sort of the identities that we take on that are truly not ours. And so there will be a point of tension for the next 6 months where you need to sort of look at yourself and it's like, is this me or is this not me? Certainly the things that light you up and give you joy positive ego. The things that take away from you fuel negative ego suffering, for example. The eighth is also about, gets into themes about value and worth and the psyche, money and finance and assets. And so the next 6 months could be through a financial lens, or the next 6 months could be through the lens of the psyche and the self and personal development. Depends on the Sag rising. That said, we will have a full moon in Libra. Libra is something called your 11th sign, so the very dynamic time over the next, towards the end of the weekend into the beginning of next week, which was about your friends, your community, but also like, what is the future that you want to create? I know you've had a lot of Saturn energy, but Saturn makes things real and concrete. If you are making things real and concrete, Sagittarius, then what are you putting in it? What are your hopes and your dreams and your wishes for the future? And if you've made a very concrete structure over the past year, then maybe this full moon and maybe even going into the rest of April is to help you to fill that space with the things that actually nourish you. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet, and we're on the countdown for Saturn's arrival in Aries, and that's going to be a major shift in your personal time. This will be on May 24th. In the meantime, you are wrapping up your time with Saturn in Pisces. This has been a time for Capricorn to really focus on. For some Capricorns, it has been about education. You've been taking classes. You've been needing to get like a teaching or a certificate. You've needed to read things, learn things. There's been a sense of curiosity. But Saturn being Saturn, even though it's your ruler, it's to do it seriously. For some Capricorns, it's been a need to really tap into your intuition, because Pisces is the major lens in which you've been living life since March of 2023. Capricorn is typically a sign of matter in the material world, but Pisces is not. So it represents these two very different energies that have been dominant in your life since 2023. You are coming to the end of that period of your life, but it's been a time to really navigate the emotional, the spiritual, the things that are not really concrete, versus the part of you that is very structured, very organized, very, I would say material, but I mean that in the best possible way. We just had that solar eclipse in something called your fourth sign. So Aries is a space where you're going to really see changes over the next 6 months. And Aries for you is your sign of home and family. You had 2 eclipses in this space back in April 2024 and also April 2023. But family and home, your living situation, your address, moving, or parents, or a sense of belonging, or a sense of where is home and who is home, will be the primary domain of change and action for the next 6 months. Typical eclipses, it's a change in your living situation, you move, a change in address, maybe family need more attention, and for some Capricorns, maybe it's even starting a family for those for whom that's relevant. The other domain of change and action is relationships, because the energy of the eclipse points over towards Cancer, and Cancer is your relationship sign. And so over the next 6 months, you may also see changes in relationships, new beginnings, new chapters between you and a partner, perhaps starting a relationship for whom that's relevant, and for some, maybe even ending a relationship. Not everybody, of course, that's not relevant for everybody, but relationships and home and family are 2 major things that hold up your life and give stability and security. So it's just a lot's happening right now in Capricorn's astrology, and the next 6 months might come with personal milestones, but this is the last eclipse that you're going to have in Cancer for another in Aries for another 9 years. But when Saturn gets into Aries on May 24th, it sort of puts you in a different time, and it may make some of these seeds that have been planted over the past 2 years real and concrete. Oh, and Libra full moon. keep forgetting about it because my brain's on the eclipse. Libra full moon. Libra is your career sign. For some Capricorns, this is about your career. It could be about your public life, your public reputation, duties and responsibilities, but it just adds to this rather intense mix that's happening for Capricorn, where perhaps a lot is being asked of you at the moment. Aquarius. So Saturn is your planet. Saturn, we're on a countdown to Saturn going into Aries. It goes into Aries on May 24th, which is somehow a little less than April, May. That's a little less than 2 months from now. Hard to believe. And Saturn, as your ruler, it's also the master timekeeper in astrology. And you've been in this period of time that's been since March of 2023. And that time has really been focused for some Aquarius. It's very much about money. Money, income, how you earn a living, needing to make more money, needing to learn lessons around money, needing to get very clear about what you need and what you don't need. It's been, again, a major time in your life. And for some, you've made money. You've created more stability and security. You've made investments. You've bought something. For some other Aquariuses, it might be the opposite. Or it's not literally about money. It's more about what's really of value and what's not really of value, because money is just money. Like, we need it, of course, to keep the lights on and to keep ourselves rooted and secure, but you can't bring it with you, for example. So we have that, and then we also have this recent solar eclipse in Aries. So Aries and Cancer are going to represent these two main fields of action and change for the next 6 months. Cancer, for you, Aquarius, is something called I have to do the astrology math, is something called your 6th sign. And so Cancer, well, let's go back to Aries. Aries is your 3rd sign. So the main focal point of change in energy could be around voice, communication, how you think and listen and learn. Maybe you're taking more classes, maybe you're writing a manuscript, maybe you are teaching classes, maybe it's just a lot of restlessness and travel and exploration. The energy of that eclipse points over towards the 6th. Both the 3rd and the 6th are places of learning and discovery, but more in the information, ideas, critical thinking, and needing to sort and to put things in order. For some Aquariuses, the next 6 months, you could see a focal point on health and wellness. You do have Mars here presently. It's to sort of check in, like, what's going on in my life. Is the main story at the moment about health and wellness? Is it about education and travel? Maybe siblings, for example. Or is it something else? Do you feel the drive with Mars over in your 6th, with the energy of the eclipse supporting it, to really make some changes, to reorganize and restructure things, to reprioritize things? Because the 6th is also like our operation space. We all have operations. We get up, we do this, we do that, we go to work, whatever it is. But sometimes when the energy of Mars comes here, we need to really reprioritize things. Maybe we need to reorder and structure things. And for some Aquariuses, this energy is about starting a project. It could be an education project. It could be a project where you get to share your voice, to speak, to listen. But then we have the Libra full moon. And this Libra full moon is in something called your 9th. And so it kind of plays off this energy. The 9th, it's not education, but it's broader vision. The 9th is where we want to see more out of life. We want to travel, we want to explore, we want to get a higher degree, we want to read all the books. The 9th really opens up our eyes. So this full moon, it's connected to this need to make your world bigger. But having said that, if you make your world bigger, then what needs to change? You need to reorganize and reprioritize your life. Again, we are a little less than 2 months away from Saturn going into Aries. Aries is your sign of voice, communication. And so the seeds that you are planting, the manuscripts that you are writing, the classes that you are taking, something will then become real and concrete when Saturn gets into Aries, June, July, and August of this year. It will come back February 14th, 2026. finally, Pisces. Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet, and it's beginning to wrap up its time in Gemini, and Gemini represents your sign of home and family roots and foundation. I feel like I've had a lot of conversations with Geminis who have moved, they have made changes in the living situation, or family have taken on more of a bigger role in their life. Or it's not literally about the home environment or family, it's more about coming more within, for example. Jupiter continues to be in a square to Saturn, so this continues to be a time that asks more of you, more responsibility, more accountability, more showing up. But this time allows you to build something and to build it real and to build it concretely. That said, we just had a solar eclipse, and so the field of change and action over the next 6 months will be something called your second sign. The second sign in astrology represents money, income, material stability, and security. It could be literally the amount of money you make, or the property that you own, or it could be the sort of a more of a philosophical sense of like, what do I need? What's important and what's invaluable? Maybe it's time to set a budget. Maybe it's time to do something different. But you had 2 eclipses here already at April of 2024 and April 2023. So I would sort of use those times as threads as part of a bigger story. You may buy property over the next 6 months. You may need to get very clear about spending and to really create a budget. Again, everybody's different. And the energy of that eclipse goes over towards Cancer, which is called your 5th sign. So the other domain of change and action will be the 5th. The 5th represents the things that light you up and give you joy, that give you passion. It's identity. It's the things that make you you, but what makes you you? It's when you do the things that you love. You nourish the positive ego. It is a time to get back to your creativity. It's a time for you to get back to you. Maybe there's just been a lot of restructuring in your life, and you get into these themes of value and worth, and even self-worth and value, or even the value of the things that you create. So for some Pisces, it's about, again, creativity, art, expression, or even just getting into the courage and bravery to be you. That said, we just had, or we will have a Libra full moon. A Libra full moon is in something called your 8th sign. Kind of going back to this idea of the courage and bravery to be you. Well, the 8th sign is a space where you have to face yourself. You need to look within. And for sometimes it is to face your fears, or it is to go into the deepest parts of yourself. So this full moon is playing off of the recent solar eclipse, but the full moon also says, if you're not prioritizing you, if you're not filling your life with the things that light you up and give you joy, why? What's in the way? Where do you need to make a change? So this full moon this weekend might be bringing up a lot of deep emotions and emotional material. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of April 7th through 13th, 2025. So thank you all for watching me. Thank you all for this week. Remember, next week it will be recorded, but that said, it is still a big time. We have energy of the eclipses. You can still book a consultation with me so we can see how this is relevant in your life and where change may happen over the next 6 months. Go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify, I'm on YouTube, and I will see you all recorded next week. Take care. Bye.